It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
After centuries of war, we're still here, fighting the machines. And the machines manifest themselves in many different ways. Now, I'll tell you what it always comes down to. We rule you. You're livestock on our farm. And if they can't use force to make you part of their collective, let me tell you what they do. They hold up your soul. And they put a 45 to it, and they say, you're eternal damnation if you don't fill in the blank. Go die for whatever. Empire, go kill the Muslims, dude, because God said. Don't think I don't pay attention to this stuff. I get it all. I mean, damn. Now, what we left the last hour with, I'm reminding myself here, that, why is it always that there's someone else that wants to interpret whatever I have in my own mind, whatever evidence, senses, I've come to some conclusion. I've used what I thought might be critical thinking or experience, and I'm going, I fill in the blank with this. And if you're open-minded, you'll alter, change, and there's some things you can or can't answer. And I'm just, that somebody else would use the force, even, of government to say, this means you must therefore fill in the blank. Don't think that happens? If you're a moral person, you're allowing them to take your money to redistribute your wealth for fill-in-the-blank reason. Education. Retirement. That's why I so focus on libertarianism. I mean, so thou shalt not aggress. I think you can find that a lot in the New Testament. I'm good with that. Christ was, I used to think Christian meant to be more Christ-like. I didn't know there was a whole bunch of things I had to do. As time goes on, all of a sudden it's like you got to check off all these boxes. Did you, according to what some guy behind a pulpit said. As you read the New Testament, the idea that I got is to be Christian was to be more Christ-like, which is why we made in the early 90s, when they were saying we were a Christian nation, we made all these bumper stickers that said Jesus is libertarian. Oh, that caused conversations, don't you think? Why? Because he didn't go to Caesar and say, make him be his brother's keeper. He used witness, parable, testimony, example, voluntary persuasion in order to see the light. Now, if you didn't, okay, fine. You don't get to, go on the merry path and pearly gates or whatever, but there was no earthly put a gun to your head.
Yes, there was.
There is now. That's my point. Here we go.
In those days, it was a sword, and Jesus himself had ordered and had thousands of people brought and be slaughtered in front of him who did not believe in Jesus. So that's not exactly peace and love.
You can't just wing that by. Give me that one, man. You probably know the Bible better than me. Go ahead.
I probably do.
All right, go ahead.
It's in my book.
All right. See, my thing is that if I have to look to a book, yours or the Bible, to get truth, I can see it as a tool. I can see it as, ideas. I can, immerse myself in all kinds of facts and other people's ideas and interpretations and so on. But, Mark's right, man. Eventually it all comes down to it's in my head. And when you can analyze certain events or experiences, and it helps make you what you are, for anyone else to come up and interpret for me, they may help me understand or add more facts or something, but in the end, for them to get in my head and tell me what something means, I'm like, wow, man, that's hubris big time.
Well, let me explain a little bit about the senses, because you were talking about those just before we went on the break, and you were saying things that come into your mind through your senses. By the senses, we're talking about the typical 5 senses everybody knows about, hearing, feeling, touching, all that kind of good stuff. It's from these basic perceptual senses that we learn all of the things that we have, all of our concepts. A lot of people will argue against this, saying, no, our senses are not valid. For example, this is a very famous old example. When you put a stick into water, where it breaks, where it hits the surface, it looks as if it's bent, yet we know it's not bent. Well, as we know from this, you discovered that it was not bent, first of all, by your senses, but secondly, critical thinking, your brain, as you learned to learn what science was, the reason it appears to be to your senses that it is bent has to do with the speed of light and how things are going in air versus water. That takes learning and education to pick that up, and for your mind then to be able to integrate that with exactly what's happening. Simple percepts, you wouldn't live. That's how animals live. Most humans have learned to live on a conceptual level at a very low level. They know exactly what to do, opening doors, turning on light switches and things like that without even thinking about it. But what you need to do is to be able to distinguish on a much higher level reality. And reality means that's what exists. The unreal does not exist by definition. The unreal is really the negation of existence, which is the content of human consciousness. And you're thinking that consciousness is existence, and it's not. And this goes back to the issue, which is covered in the book, God on Trial, the issue of primacy of consciousness versus primacy of existence. Which came first?
I got to revert to the Ayn Rand thing. A is A, man. I mean, it is what it is. But then you get Butler Schaefer going, yeah, in your opinion.
Well, first of all, I disagree mostly a lot with Butler Schaefer. But if you look at so this is covered in my book fairly well, and I'm going to go through it very quickly. In order to be conscious of something, it must exist. And so the argument, well, maybe you're conscious of yourself. It must itself exist before you can have it, which means you have to have a primacy of existence before you can have something that's conscious to be conscious of that which exists. And this is a primary critical thinking concept.
Okay, wait. So you're saying the tree in the forest didn't fall if nobody was there to hear it?
Depends on how you're looking at this. The sound waves will obviously continue. Whether or not you hear it, it has to do with whether or not something.
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're going, something doesn't exist until somebody's there to perceive its existence?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, so go ahead and explain that.
No, let me make it clear. As Mr. Obama would say, I would like to be perfectly clear.
And then here comes the mud. Okay, go ahead.
No. I'm straight on this part. I'm saying existence exists independent of what anyone wants it to be, thinks it might be, or anything else. Okay. It is what it is.
A is A. Got it.
Hey, see, I knew we'd agree on something.
All right.
And that's the beginning of critical thought. And that's how you tell the difference between a true belief, one that can identify and establish reality, one that you know when it have a certain sequence of events, what will happen next. It's the difference between a hypothesis and a theory.
This objective reality, I mean, I've had this conversation. Butler Schaefer, he wrote a lot of people that don't know him or his writings really well. He's a subjectivist. He's like going, anytime you could say anything, no matter how exact, you can evidence all. And he goes, yeah, in your opinion. I mean, he always says that. It's your own perception. It's how you. So and
here's where he's wrong.
And it's part of his critical thinking.
No, it isn't.
What is it?
He has committed and consistently commits the fallacy of the stolen concept. He wouldn't even understand what that is because
I'm waiting.
because he has studied so little about critical thinking. Butler Schaefer, to me, is not a thinker.
Wow. Man, he's throwing down on Butler. Well, if you're throwing down on Butler, you're just begging for it. We're going to have Butler here in the next month or so. We're going to do at least 4 hours of video that's going to be about the history of the freedom movement, because he's one of the last guys standing of like the Freedom College back in the 50s. So it's we'll definitely be bringing this stuff up. He'll get to defend himself. But when we come back, I want to get more into the book, God on trial. Be right back.